Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
When I found him in the park, he was still breathing.
Disturbing details about the suspected overdose death of a teen at a Langley skate park. Also,
I thought I would be there forever.
a Nanaimo man detained in Syria after seeking adventure is free. And
Hong Kong people try to fight for our rights and freedom.
as protests ramp up, Canada increases a travel advisory for Hong Kong.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. We are learning more tonight about the teen who died of a suspected overdose at a Langley skate park. Carson Cremeni was just 14 years old. His family believes he died because someone gave him drugs. And even more disturbing, witnesses stood by and captured photos and video on their cell phones, later posting it to social media. Belle Puri has our top story.
Carson Cremeni turned 14 just last month. He played hockey, he liked to cook, he was looking forward to grade 9 in September.
He's a happy kid, big heart. Like to have fun, like play video games.
For the most part, Carson was raised by his grandfather. On Wednesday, when the boy was late coming home, Daryl Cremeni went looking for his grandson and found him at a skate park only a couple of blocks away.
When I found him in the park, he was still breathing. But he was lying on the cement all by himself in the middle of the park in the dark. And they couldn't save him.
The teen died of a suspected overdose. Family believe it was because someone gave him drugs.
Apparently they did it to watch him freak out. They filmed it, they put it on the internet, and they left him to die.
A series of photos and videos of the incident are circulating on social media.
I haven't watched a lot of it because I really don't want to, but some of it's been posted. Carson acting very out of control, showing signs of distress, and they're just laughing and taking videotapes.
One picture shows the police scene in the background with a young male laughing. The caption reads, "Carson almost died, LOL." Online messages suggest he ingested MDMA or ecstasy and Xanax. The night before he died, Carson had stayed at his dad's apartment. It wasn't unusual for Carson to hang out with older students at his high school.
I first heard he was holding out with older kids, a little bit older than him, from the principal at Walnut Grove. They said for the most part they were not concerned about it. They just thought we should know, and I did talk to him about it, and he said, I only hang out with them once in a while.
Dozens of people turned out for a candlelight vigil for Carson, and a memorial in his honor continues to grow.
RCMP want to speak to anyone who might have interacted with the teen on the day of his death. He could have been here at the skate park as early as noon on Wednesday. Investigators also want to talk to anyone who might have seen him talking to others.
Langley RCMP has also set up a dedicated, around-the-clock tip line to gather information that might help with its investigation. The BC Coroner Service is also investigating Carson's death.
He's my best friend. He's been my best friend his whole life. We do everything together. I don't even have anybody else that I hang out with. He's the only person I hang out with.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Langley.
An 11-year-old boy from Vancouver has been killed in a tragic crash in Alberta. His brother, sister, and mother are all in hospital tonight in serious condition. The family of 5 was relocating from Vancouver to St. Catharines, Ontario. RCMP say they were stopped at a construction zone near Oyen, Alberta, when a transport truck slammed into their SUV from behind. The boy died at the scene. His mother, Carla Chambers-Jeffries, remains in hospital in Calgary with potentially life-threatening injuries. Chambers-Jeffries is a trained opera singer. A friend says she made a huge impact on Vancouver's arts community in just a few years.
He's super intelligent, super eloquent, really driven, just a powerful person when you meet her. His family is just such a vibrant group of people. Like they're passionate, they're excited, they're smart, they're creative, they're talented, and you notice those things immediately when you meet any of them.
An online campaign has already raised more than $34,000 to help support the family. The federal government has increased its travel warning for Hong Kong. Travelers are being told to exercise a high degree of caution when visiting the city due to ongoing protests there. The CBC's John Hernandez visited YVR to speak with passengers making the trip.
They send us warnings, just kind of advice what to do, what not to do, stay away from the protest areas and things like that. But
43-year-old Sonia Yong got the warning last night. Exercise a high degree of caution is the message the Canadian government is sending to all travelers headed to Hong Kong. With 2 kids by her side, Yong is not taking it lightly.
our eyes have been on the news, watching to see what the protesters are doing, what's going on, the violence that's been going on. It's definitely concerning.
The federal government has increased its travel warning for Hong Kong. Mass demonstrations have crowded city streets for months, sparked by a now defunct extradition bill and wider calls for democratic reforms.
How the government is ignoring all of this, it's just going to tear the city apart further.
Vancouver-based student activist Joel Wan says traveling Canadians should be cautious. To date, thousands of tear gas grenades and rubber bullets have been used on demonstrators in the city. Earlier today, hundreds of protesters occupied the city's airport, handing out anti-government leaflets to visitors. Travelers here have been keeping tabs.
People that have arrived have said that it's very peaceful. They're just sitting there singing songs and really just trying to make this issue a globe, let people all around the world aware of what's happening.
These passengers are taking their chances. Many stand in solidarity with the demonstrators.
The Hong Kong people, they are fighting for their freedom, and their right for freedom of speech.
The Hong Kong government doesn't really do much things to improve the situation.
Benjamin Gonzalez is considering going to a protest.
It would be a good message to send our kids and to show our kids and tell them why we would be doing it.
A conflict showing no signs of slowing down. Travelers are advised to register with the federal government in case there are any more safety warnings. John Hernandez, CBC News, Richmond.
And a Nanaimo man is free tonight after being detained in Syria for more than 7 months. Christian Baxter has been described as a world traveler and maybe a bit foolish. He went to the war-torn country back in November. Greg Rasmussen reports on how a thirst for adventure led to utter despair.
CBC for helping me get out.
Christian Baxter was clearly stunned as he made a very brief statement in Beirut, flanked by Lebanon's security chief, Abbas Ibrahim, who helped obtain his release.
I'd like to thank the Lebanese.
You're welcome.
For helping me get free. I thought I would be there forever.
That was all Baxter could manage, revealing no details of his ordeal. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Chrystia Freeland, had little to say about Baxter's detention last year or his release today.
This is a consular case. It's a private matter, and it's not appropriate to offer details.
Extremely adventurous.
A longtime friend said he and others tried to dissuade the 44-year-old from making the trip last November.
Don't worry, I have everything under control. I'm only there for a couple of weeks.
But Baxter was detained, followed by months of silence from the Syrian regime. His worried mother, Andrea Leclerc, issued a video pleading for his release.
He's a fun-loving, caring person.
He's very lucky.
This Canadian who fled from Syria as a refugee says there's no rule of law in his former country, and foreigners are immediately suspected of spying.
Once you enter Syria from any border, you enter into a prison, a big prison. Whether you like it or not, whether reason or not, you enter the prison.
Despite its long civil war, Syria's government has released videos promoting itself as a safe destination for tourists.
Anyone who's thinking of traveling to a country that is in the midst of a civil war needs to have their head examined.
The regime is brutal and unforgiving, says this international law expert.
We're talking about a government that has committed mass atrocities. Listen, half of the population of Syria has been displaced. More than 500,000 people have been killed.
One of the most dangerous places on the planet. No place for sightseeing. A lesson learned the hard way by one Canadian, now safe. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Vancouver.
Langley RCMP are asking the public to take a close look at surveillance video that captures the brutal attack on a newborn dairy calf. They're hoping someone can identify the two people in the video who broke into a barn, attacked the cow, and then took off with its body in the trunk of their car. Our Mira Baines has more.
So this is the particular pen here where the calf was located.
The owners of Eagle Acres Dairy want to know who attacked and stole one of their newborn calves. Co-owner Brian Anderson says it was devastating to see two strangers pull up and shoot the 5-day-old animal with what he says appears to be a crossbow.
It was disturbing to us, even being farmers that understand what death is. It's the wrong thing to see.
This video shows a man and a woman enter the dairy farm at about 5 a.m. on August 1st. It captured what happened when the man approached the calf named Scorcher.
There was approximately 5 to 6 shots that landed in the calf over a period of about 8 minutes. So it took them a long time to actually to wound the calf. The calf was standing most of the time. It didn't lay down until the end when the perpetrator got into the pen with it and then proceeded to stab the calf.
CBC News has chosen not to show portions of the video. Anderson says the suspects were well dressed. He says the woman watched as the man attacked the newborn animal. He says they took the 100-pound calf and put its bloodied body into a dark-colored BMW. The only witness was this milking cow with her calf, who appeared agitated in the morning when Anderson and his wife arrived. Police say it's unclear if the suspects took the calf for its meat or whether there was an even more sinister motive. Investigators say the public can help in the case.
It's going to come down to the video, and potentially when we're able to get the video out there, there will be someone who can identify the movement of the culprit, or perhaps we'll be able to extract quite a good close-up of a face, and we'll be able to identify the people.
The dairy farm is open to the public, but the attack has Anderson concerned. He wants the suspects to be found and charged.
That's not the proper way of taking an animal's life if it is for food or for ceremony reasons or whatever reasons they have. If these people are caught, hopefully they can be tried for cruelty to animals.
Anyone with information is asked to call RCMP. Mira Baines, CBC News, Langley.
A Vancouver MP who decided not to allow the Komagata Maru to dock in Vancouver a century ago has had his name removed from a federal building. As the CBC's Deborah Goebel reports, those at today's announcement say removing Harry Stevens' name can't right a historical wrong, but it will help to create a more tolerant society.
Like so many federal announcements, this one started with a politician standing at a podium.
Want to acknowledge the unceded territory of the Muskins.
But today's message isn't so much about political posturing. It's about a time when Sikhs and Indigenous people crossed paths with a member of Parliament with racist views. That MP back in 1914 was Harry Stevens. More than half a century ago, this rather nondescript federal building in East Vancouver was given his name. And until recently, a plaque in the lobby commended Stevens as an outstanding public servant. Except it turns out Harry was quite vocal about his dislike of Asians. He called them a threat to a white man's country.
Harry Stevens was the main player who sent Komagata Maru back to India. He was openly making racist comments as well.
For all these things, we are truly sorry.
More than a century later, Trudeau apologized in the House of Commons for Canada turning away the almost 400 Sikh migrants on the Komagata Maru, migrants who remained in Vancouver's harbour for 2 months before being forced back to India. And today, something else was put right.
Removing the name can't, of course, erase the injustices that took place, but it can help lead us along a new path towards reconciling past wrongs and building a more inclusive and diverse Canada.
Ironically, it's Stevens' own ego that brought his racism to light.
But it's because of his collection of documents that we actually have a rich record of the Komagata Maru.
An archive that also speaks of the role local Indigenous people played. Back in 1914, the Musqueam and the Squamish and the Tsleil-Waututh would bring food and water to the starving men on the Komagata Maru. This mural depicting that kindness has been painted onto the back of the federal building.
Two Indians coming together, two cultures sharing who we are.
A building that, for now at least,
does not have a name.
I would be really disappointed if it was called like the Komagata building or something. I think it's lovely to keep it unnamed.
Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC Court of Appeal judge has denied Philip Tallio's request for bail while he appeals his decades-old child murder conviction. Tallio has always maintained his innocence, but at 17 years old, he was convicted of the rape and murder of 22-month-old Delavina Mack in Bella Coola back in 1983. Yesterday, Delavina's family told CBC News they feared for the safety of other children should Tallio be released. Today, the judge said Tallio could reapply for bail if his supporters arrange a more structured, supervised environment to ensure public safety. Well, it's been a little over a year since the city cleared away dozens of tents from the so-called 135A Street Strip in Surrey. Today, the encampment is gone, but that doesn't mean everyone has found housing. Tent cities are popping up all over Surrey. And as Jesse Johnston reports, the people who live in them are now asking the city for help.
Isn't that cool?
Shane Knight is a fitness nut. When he moved to this tent city in Surrey, there was a problem. It didn't have a gym.
Boom, perfect.
So he built one in the middle of the woods out of scrap materials.
Even if we got to go through a log like Fred Penner and, and prop it on the other side and there's a gym, whatever, right?
16 people live at the encampment they call Sanctuary City. In addition to the gym, they have an naloxone station, strict rules, and...
Come on, baby girl.
Security. Well, kind of.
Yeah, a good girl. Come on, my love.
Wanda Stopa started the encampment in April. She, like most of her neighbors, lived in a tent on 135A Street before it was cleared away. Many people moved into shelters or modular housing. Others went into the bush, where it's tough to find water.
I think it's a 20-liter jug, and then a whole bunch of 2-liter bottles and 1-liter bottles, and whatever else bottles we can find, and we go take it down to the Chevron.
By the grace of God.
Homeless advocates say that's quite a hike, so they want the city to hook up a water fountain to a nearby fire hydrant like it did 2 years ago during a sweltering summer on 135A Street.
Just putting the emergency fountain on a hydrant local to that camp would be an absolute benefit.
Modular housing is full. There's shelter space available, but many prefer to live here where it's quiet and they feel safe. Back at the gym, Knight knocks out rep after rep while the city reviews the water fountain request. It's sticky hot.
You got it.
And he could sure use a drink.
Oh, thanks, man.
Jesse Johnston, CBC News, Surrey.
The BC Wildfire Service is setting more fires in an attempt to control the growing blaze at Eagle Bluff in the Okanagan Valley. The wildfire was estimated at nearly 23 square kilometers this morning. It was about 15 square kilometers yesterday. But officials say the growth is largely due to a controlled burn conducted by fire crews. It's moving away from communities and should allow for safer working spaces on the fire. Well, a dog on death row lost his last appeal in the BC Court of Appeal, the judge dismissing the owner's fight against a court-ordered euthanization. That means Punky will be destroyed unless his owner takes the appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada. Susan Santix says she's going to be meeting with her lawyer over the weekend to discuss that. A provincial judge ruled Punky was dangerous after he bit a woman 2 years ago in an off-leash park in Vancouver in 2017. Santix is also being sued in civil court by the victim. Now, police in Abbotsford are asking people to keep their drones at home if they're heading to the air show this weekend. Over the past year, drones have been spotted at several air shows around Canada, which police say is a major safety risk, not only to the pilots, but also to the thousands of people who take in the event. Flying a drone in close proximity to an airport is illegal. Transport Canada considers drones an aircraft and the person operating them a pilot, which means you need a valid certificate in order to fly one. Anybody caught breaking the rules could face serious penalties, including fines or even jail time. Abbotsford Air Show weekend, Kits Fest weekend, a lot going on. What can people expect?
Well, I wish I could give a forecast as good as it was for the long weekend, because then it was just nothing but sunshine. It was a lot of warmth, in fact, heat. This weekend, unfortunately, it's going to be feeling a little bit different. I wish I could promise a good one, but I do think we're going to be seeing a few showers throughout the weekend. Now, that said, we do desperately need the rain. We've been quite dry for the past week or so, but it doesn't bode well if you are going there for the air show, that is. I wanted to start by showing you what our current temperatures are like right now across the region. It is noticeably cooler than I have felt in a long time. Outside on this balcony, there is a bit of a breeze going, so when I see around 19 degrees, that makes absolute sense for right now. A little warmer into the valley, but the main difference right now is that we're not seeing a lot of sunshine. There are a few peaks of sun here and there, but largely it has been a cloudy day, at least for the morning into the early afternoon. Now, of course, everyone has on their mind, what are you going to be doing for the weekend? I wanted to show you the forecast as far as I could best put it together. For the overnight period tonight, expect temperatures to go down to around 16 degrees or so, and again, it'll largely be cloudy. Tomorrow, though, is not a write-off. It's going to be a day that we're going to see a few showers here and there. Temperatures will be getting up to about 21 degrees, but I'm feeling pretty good about those showers happening more so late day. Those will continue throughout the overnight, and by the time we get to Sunday, they should clear out in the morning, which would bode well for any type of air show activity into the afternoon.
Okay, Brett, thanks. Talk to you in a bit.
Sounds good.
And just a reminder, you can watch this newscast and all of CBC's other award-winning content wherever you go by downloading the free CBC Gem app. And CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Follow us on all platforms for extra content you won't see on TV. Well, it's a major overhaul of Canada's drug pricing system. Coming up, when we can expect to be paying less for some prescription drugs. Okay, time now for our Friday film review. Comedian Melissa McCarthy leads two mob wives in a crime wave after their husbands are arrested. The movie The Kitchen has all the ingredients to be a memorable feast, but does it leave you hungry for more? CBC's entertainment reporter Eli Glasner finds out.
The Kitchen isn't going for comedy, it's aiming for pathos. Set in Hell's Kitchen, 1978, this is the story of Claire, Kathy, and Ruby, abandoned when their partners, members of the Irish Mafia, are sent to jail. McCarthy is the mother of two, Tiffany Haddish, the unwanted wife of one of the main mobsters, and Elizabeth Moss plays a woman who is meek and abused. So the women decide to do what their men did, and eventually attracting attention. Now, if you're starting to get a sense of deja vu, let me remind you of 2018's Widows, a movie about women forced into a heist when their partners are killed. Directed by Steve McQueen, what Widows had was a palpable sense of menace, a superior set of characters, and something larger to say. Not only does The Kitchen romanticize the good old days when paying for mobsters used to mean something, but it makes McCarthy and her friends' rise to power just all too easy. While The Kitchen spends a lot of time getting the setting, the wardrobe, and the hair right, look at those Farrah Fawcett curls. The characters are paper thin. McCarthy as the mom turned mobster. Tiffany Haddish's main weapon seems to be her deadly stink eye. And then there's Elizabeth Moss as Claire, who goes from being beaten to discovering she has a knack for murder. Instead of establishing a sense of tone or some grit, Gerloff relies on the late 70s soundtrack to keep the increasingly implausible story chugging along.
I can see you got brains, and I know you got money. But we got one thing that you don't. We got criminals.
What's criminal is wasting three of the most watchable actors in the business on a story that never rises to the occasion. The Kitchen gets 2.5 stars out of 5. Do yourself a favor and rent Widows instead. I gave that 5 out of 5. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Apparently 5 is better than 2.5. There you go. All right, stick around. We're going to have details on the government's planned overhaul of the pharmacare system in just a few moments. Stay with us. The Trudeau government has announced a big overhaul of Canada's drug system, a move it says will lower prices and is a critical step towards a national pharmacare program. Ashley Burke has more on the plan and the skepticism about it.
This is an insulin pen.
James Elliott lives with type 1 diabetes. He says balancing his medications is like a game of Tetris. In his case, it's an expensive game.
It feels frustrating to pay thousands of dollars in order to stay alive.
He spends about $5,000 a year out of pocket on his prescription drugs and medical supplies.
$5,000 is a lot of money to anyone. So, I mean, that's the difference between a car, between down payment on a house.
Canadians pay some of the highest prices for drugs in the developed world, 25% more than average. So, for the first time in 3 decades, Health Canada is updating the regulations, a move it says that will protect Canadians from excessive prices for new drugs.
We simply want to make sure that all Canadians have access to affordable prescription medication.
Canada currently compares drug costs to 7 other countries to determine how much pharmaceutical companies can charge. Starting next summer, the United States and Switzerland will be pulled from that benchmark list because their drug prices are so high. That could mean lower prices.
If we look at our plan to move forward with the National Pharmacare program, the first thing that we need to do is to reduce the price of prescription medication. So the announcement today is certainly a huge step to make sure that we can meet that goal.
The goal of National Pharmacare is expected to be a key part of the Liberal platform. The NDP has already promised they'll introduce universal pharmacare if elected, so they question the Liberals' timing.
The government actually had this regulation in the books on the table since 2017. They waited for 2 years, 1 month before the electoral campaign to actually announce the implementation. So it's very obvious it is for electoral purposes that this announcement is made now.
The government spent 3 years consulting and reviewing this plan. The health minister says they took all of that time to get it right. The new changes are set to come into effect July 1st, after the federal election. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Residents of Toronto have been rocked by a recent wave of gun violence. There have been about 24 shootings in that city in just the past 2 weeks. As Ali Chiasson reports, it's putting a lot of pressure on the government, in particular the police chief, to take action.
The tally keeps ticking. As of today, there have been over 24 shootings in August, 23 people suffering gunshot wounds. In 11 cases, no victim was found at the scene, just shell casings, and 2 deaths, including a 16-year-old boy.
This recent gun activity, these shootings that have happened over the past 10 days, by and large, have street gang connotations to them or are street gang related.
Bad guys shooting bad guys, the chief says. Some arrests have been made, guns seized, but not enough to make a dent.
The expectations are that we're going to arrest ourselves out of this. We simply are not.
And a revolving door bail system, he says, isn't helping. Right now, there are 326 people out on bail with gun charges against them.
That is unbelievable.
Evelyn Fox lost her son Kissinger to gun violence in 2016. The back-to-back shootings this week in Scarborough happened 5 minutes from her house.
For some of us, it really does not feel like a safe city. We are terrified to let our surviving children know.
She says families like hers are being re-traumatized with every shooting.
Like, I watched my son die from a bullet wound, and I'll never forget that. And it literally plays in your head over and over and over again, and you just wonder, like, why my son? Out of everybody there, why my son? And it literally makes you feel like you're going crazy.
With this afternoon's shooting, that adds another Toronto family grieving.
Our justice system is failing us. Our justice system does not care about the victims. They cater more to the perpetrators and do not care about the victims. That's horrible.
Today, the police chief said he'd like the bail laws to change, but they're federal.
If we had an opportunity of making some sort of amendment or some sort of understanding in the courts, because you can be sitting in court in Toronto, but your bar, your benchmark is on what's going on in Canada.
We asked Minister of Border Security and Organized Crime Reduction, Bill Blair, about the federal bail laws. And he said in a statement, quote, where an individual is released on bail, the releasing judge is required to impose a condition preventing possession of a firearm. If the accused person breaches that term, the Crown can seek to revoke bail. And as always, individual determinations of bail are left to the court. No mention of any changes that can be made, given the very special circumstance that Toronto is in right now with its gun and gang issue. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
For Indigenous people, language is a lifeline to culture. Coming up, the Google Earth project that allows users to see Indigenous lands and hear more than 50 languages. Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Apparently they did it to watch him freak out. They filmed it, they put it on the internet, and they left him to die.
Disturbing details in the overdose death of a 14-year-old boy in a Langley skate park.
I thought I would be there forever. Honestly, I didn't know if anyone knew if I was alive.
He went to Syria last year to seek adventure, but was detained for reasons related to Syrian law. With the help of Lebanon, Christian Baxter of Nanaimo was freed today.
Hong Kong government doesn't really do much things to improve the situation.
Hundreds of anti-government demonstrators took their protests to Hong Kong's international airport today. This as Canada and other countries increase travel advisories for the city. Well, Google Earth released a new tool today that highlights more than 50 Indigenous languages from around the world, including right here in British Columbia. As the CBC's Casarusi reports, it gives virtual travelers the chance to experience Indigenous culture firsthand.
Okay, let's click here.
Languages around the world are disappearing at an alarming rate.
This is in British Columbia, so we'll hear a greeting now.
But with a click of the mouse and with the help of Google Earth, more than 50 Indigenous languages around the world are coming to life. With recorded audio clips of greetings, chants, and even a few traditional songs.
One of the basic greetings that we use here in Halkami'nam is asking, how are you?
Mandy Jones is among one of the 7 Indigenous persons from Canada featured in the Google Earth project.
My hope is that people see it and want to learn more about the language in our territory. They'll hear the word Halkami'nam and they'll say, that must be from Nanaimo. I got to find out more about this.
Google Earth has the same objective, to raise awareness of languages and help preserve them too. Through the years, Jones worked hard to preserve her traditional language and today teaches the language to both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people on Vancouver Island.
If we lose our language, we lose our culture. If we lose our culture, we lose our language.
If you think of the residential school situation, people were punished for speaking their languages. They went back home. They were afraid to speak the languages.
She says the fact that the Google Earth project coincides with the UN International Year of Indigenous Languages is a cause for celebration.
What it does is value the language, and it shows that it's something that's important to people. It shows the relationship of language with land, because they're talking about where they come from.
Talking and celebrating a language that for many was taken from them so long ago. Casarusi, CBC News, Toronto.
At 6:37, there's a live shot looking south tonight over the Cambie Street Bridge. Well, the weekend is here, and so is Brett. His forecast is coming up next. And our Anita Bathe jumps from an airplane on purpose at the Abbotsford Air Show. Stay with us. Well, the Abbotsford Air Show officially kicked off today, and among the high-flying performers are the Canadian Forces Snowbirds, the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds, and a whole host of modern and vintage planes alike.
Oh yeah, you gotta love it. But the Canadian Armed Forces parachute team, also better known as the Skyhawks, were also taking air. And earlier this week, if you can believe it, our very own Anita Bathe got a chance to take a jump out of one of those planes. Take a look.
The Abbotsford Air Show. Okay, I'm a little bit obsessed. Growing up down the street, I have so many memories of the snowbirds flying in perfect formation, the ridiculously loud CF-18 going right overhead, and of course the oh-so-brave Skyhawks, Canada's parachute demonstration team, thrilling audiences by jumping out of planes, and today I am going to do just that. So what did I get myself into today?
Today we're going to be boarding this aircraft over here, climbing up all the way to about 12,500 feet. I have a harness for myself, a huge parachute. We'll be strapped in together, and then this is going to open. You're going to be jumping.
Let's do this.
How was that?
That was the most incredible thing I've ever done in my life.
Are you going to do it again?
I might have to.
All right.
Thank you, that was amazing.
No problem, our pleasure.
I turned around with Mount Baker behind, so nice shot of Mount Baker.
Mount Baker was beautiful. That was so amazing. Thank you.
How you liked it?
She down? She's okay?
She's good. I am so proud of her. I give her so much credit for that.
Oh.
You would never do it?
No.
Not a thing?
No.
I've done it once, and honestly, that feeling when the parachute actually opens, you lurch right up into the air, and it feels like your stomach just drops out the other end. It's the weirdest feeling. Would recommend, but, you know, not everyone's cup of tea.
There you go. All about the air show.
Yeah, it is. And I've got a full forecast, actually, for the air show, because I know it's a very important event that's going to be going on. But I wanted to start off by showing you what it looked like first thing this morning. Here in downtown Vancouver, one of the things that was a common theme throughout the day today was definitely that cloud cover. And because of all that cloud, the temperature never really budged. It was pretty well stuck at 18 for the vast majority of the morning, and then into the late afternoon, we finally got a few peaks of sun, but that was about it. So we got spoiled over these past couple of days. There was a lot of heat, there was a lot of sunshine, but we're starting to change things up, and we're going to get into a little bit more of a wet pattern just in time for the weekend. But it's not all bad. I wanted to show you how things are going to be playing out throughout Saturday. I wanted to pause it here very specifically. See this little tiny ball of green specifically over Abbotsford at 10 o'clock in the morning? Don't worry about it too much. It's just saying that there's probably going to be at least a little bit of shower activity in the region, but I wouldn't hold it straight to Abbotsford in that case. Throughout the rest of the day, it's fine, but it really is going to be Sunday morning. We're going to watch all of this rain come from the southwest. It's going to be moving from west to east across the whole region, and that has the potential then for Sunday afternoon to be bringing a few showers to Abbotsford for that show. Elsewhere, though, it will be clearing up closer to Vancouver, and if you're going up the sea to sky, it's not looking too shabby out there as well. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, the special air quality statement in effect right now has now been expanded to include the entire southeastern portion of the interior, and this is because of all of that smoke. But I've got good news for you. There is actually a lot of rain coming, and in fact, there's going to be enough that it should actually help the relief effort here and and temperatures as well really going to be taking a dive. We were seeing temperatures into the upper 30s for the past few days, and then now when we get into the next little while, you're actually going to see temperatures into the Okanagan go down into the low 20s, if you can believe it. So that's going to be doing really well for a fire danger rating by the end of the weekend. And just another recap here of what you can be expecting over the next little while. Temperatures, of course, for the next 2 days are going to be right around 20 degrees or so. A few spotty showers here and there, but it is definitely not a washout weekend. And then by the time we get to the start of the work week again, I think that sun will be making a pretty triumphant return. So that's how she goes.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think you got to have a mixture of everything.
A little cooler is nice as well.
Yes, exactly. All right, well, despite injury and a tough opponent, a 19-year-old from Mississauga is the first Canadian to advance to the semifinals of the Rogers Cup since 1969. You should have a look here at her winning moment.
She did it! Bianca is bionic!
Yeah, she did it. Bianca Andreescu faced former world #1 Karolina Pliskova of the Czech Republic in her quarterfinal match today. She took the first set easily, but Pliskova came back. A late-game thigh injury plagued the hometown favorite, but she never backed down. She's going to take on Sophia Kenin from the U.S. in the semis tomorrow. A strict curfew was eased in India-run Kashmir's main city for Friday prayers, but tensions in the disputed region remain high. The latest on an unprecedented security lockdown coming up.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC Vancouver is a proud sponsor of the Vancouver Queer Film Festival. The festival showcases dynamic and thought-provoking films and provides a vibrant space for queer arts, culture, and community. And your favorite summer tradition is back. Musical Nooners is back for its 10th year, so grab a lunch and a friend and enjoy free concerts weekdays at noon all summer long. For more, check us out online.
Tensions remain high in the disputed region of Kashmir tonight, even after a slight easing of severe security measures by India. As Susan Ormiston tells us, India's actions have infuriated people in Kashmir and Pakistan.
Friday prayers, and India relaxed some restrictions, allowing people to venture out to the mosques, where deep frustration was palpable. The dispute can only be decided with the people here, said the Imam. These men left the mosques emboldened, crowding onto the streets, tensions rising.
In every part of India, people are celebrating, but they don't know that our hearts are bleeding. We are crying, we are under siege.
Young Kashmiris are now actively protesting, taunting Indian security forces who are responding with tear gas and pellet guns. Mobile phone and internet is still cut off, travel restricted, but there are no signs when the lockdown will be universally lifted. Yesterday, Indians paused to watch their Prime Minister assert that Indian-controlled Kashmir will no longer get special status, instead be split into 2 Indian territories.
And now it is absolute military occupation. So that is a shock, what India has done.
Kashmiri Canadian Farouk Siddiqui has not been able to speak with his sister in a week.
There is a complete alienation of Kashmiris, and Kashmiris are not going to accept it, and there is chances that Kashmiris will erupt.
The removal of special status came suddenly and may be connected to swiftly developing peace talks between the U.S. and the Taliban in neighboring Afghanistan.
Timing it now when it does coincide with the United States suggesting that the peace talks with the Taliban are going somewhere, and that is clearly something which advantages Pakistan and disadvantages India.
India maintains the events in Kashmir are an internal affair.
We reject that it is an internal issue of India, or for that matter, Pakistan.
Next week is critical as India celebrates Independence Day with new but still disputed territory. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, London.
Police in Texas say the man accused of the mass shooting in El Paso last Saturday has confessed, and he said his target was Mexicans. 22 people died there, and 9 people were killed in a shooting the next day in Dayton, Ohio. The 2 attacks have dramatically increased pressure on President Donald Trump to do something about access to guns. Karen Pauls has more tonight from Washington.
The heat and humidity didn't hinder an opportunity for President Donald Trump to tell reporters what was on his mind. The wide-ranging discussion included some nuggets on gun control.
I think meaningful background checks are a real positive.
The National Rifle Association has been warning Trump that that won't go over well with his base. But he didn't seem too worried about that, saying his supporters take their guidance from him.
I really believe that the NRA, I've spoken to them numerous times, they're really good people. They're great patriots. They love our country. They love our country so much. And frankly, I really think they're going to get there also.
In the wake of attacks last weekend that killed 31 people and injured many more, Trump also suggested there's growing political support for gun legislation.
We don't want insane people, mentally ill people, bad people, dangerous people. We don't want guns in the hands of the wrong people. I think that the Republicans are going to be great and lead the charge along with the Democrats.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said he has no plans to reconvene the Senate from its summer break, but he said there are bipartisan discussions taking place.
Background checks and red flags would probably lead the discussion, but a lot of other things will come up as well. But what we can't do is fail to pass something.
The president's ideas on gun control have evolved over the course of this week. This is some of the strongest language he's used so far, but he said things like this before, and there's been no change. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Washington.
China has issued an emergency alert as a typhoon gathers steam heading towards its largest coastal city. The country has issued a red alert, its most severe weather warning. 200-kilometer-an-hour winds are driving torrential rain toward the eastern coast. Shanghai is bracing for a hit early tomorrow. Emergency crews are in place to help with evacuations. Flights are canceled, businesses closed, and some train service suspended. Yesterday, that same storm hit Taiwan, dumping 900 millimeters or 35 inches of rain there. Also left 40,000 homes without power. Well, does staring at a seagull stop it from stealing your food? Coming up, we put the findings of a British study to the test. If you've ever had a picnic at the beach or the park, you know the danger seagulls can pose to your lunch. Well, now a new study out of the UK has a strategy for keeping your snacks safe.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, but it says that if you can actually stare at the seagull, it will actually prevent them from stealing your food. So we needed to conduct our own experiment to see if that worked. So we gave CBC producer Matt Humphrey some French fries, and we asked him to test out the theory for himself.
To start, we won't look at the food. I'll pretend that I don't notice that the birds are eating the food behind me and, you know, let them have a field day. And as you can see, without me looking at the birds, they're eating the French fries. I assume. I'm not looking at it, but I assume they're eating the French fries. Now, we'll test the second part of the theory. If I look at the birds, they won't eat the French fries. You'll notice I'm not waving my arms, I'm not shooing them away in any way, I'm just maintaining eye contact with these magnificent birds. Hey, okay, that didn't work at all. Okay, that didn't work at all. The theory doesn't work because they'll just come in greater numbers and eat all the food. Maybe with one seagull it'll work. Maybe. This myth has just been debunked. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Vancouver.
All right, I mean,
Yeah.
that was pretty good.
It was, oh yeah, and it's a British study, right?
Right,
So maybe it worked in Britain. Maybe the seagulls just didn't like the British food.
Well, yeah, they were just, this is not worth
They
it.
boiled all the goodness out of it
Exactly.
or something, right? Yeah.
But those guys are ruthless. I was at Granville Island, and it actually stole a donut out of my cousin's hand, like mid-flight. I have never seen something like that before. They're crazy.
Crafty creatures.
They are.
There you go.
You know.
That's all the time we have tonight. Dan's here at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Have a great weekend.
Take care.